Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we venture through the Twilight Zone. Beyond the outer limits of reality, to arrive at our destination, the Unicus Radio Hour. And now, here is your host, critically acclaimed author and researcher, Robert Stanley.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Unicus Radio Hour. I am your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, podcasting from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet. Hope you're doing well. I'm fine. These interviews are getting more interesting all the time, so I hope tonight is no exception. I have a friend. I'm fortunate to call this man a friend of mine. He actually used to be my neighbor here in Hong Kong. His name's Charles Frith, a former advertising specialist who's worked around the world, and primarily in Asia, on global accounts for internationally well-known brand names. And in 2011, Charles had a DMT experience which left him with the mission of using his social media footprint to spread the unreported truth. We've had a lot of conversations about this off the air, so I thought he'd be interesting to bring on the air. He's built a large following on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. But he's also been a victim, one of the early victims of censorship. And his accounts were deleted, and he now looks on as an observer of the attempt to describe reality, or what they tell us is reality. And his blog is still available at charlesfrith.blogspot.com. Charles Frith, welcome to the show.
Oh, good morning to you, Robert.
It's nice of you to get up so bloody early there in the UK. You're in the UK, right?
That's right. I'm back in my hometown of Southampton. I came back to the UK a couple of years ago to be with my mother, who was unwell.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. But, and actually I was very sorry to see you go. I mean, you and I met on the internet. I believe you were in, was it Thailand?
That's right. When we met, I was in Asia. You were still in the States. And it's just an incredible story because you relocated to Hong Kong.
Yes.
And then a few years later, I moved there, and lo and behold, we were 5 minutes away from each other, separated by a very cute ferry ride, 5 minutes.
Yes, and we were able to sit together in a pub and have a proper chat over a pint. And I was really thrilled to actually spend time with you because I got to know you and become friends over the internet, which is, I guess that's how it is today. Most people that I know well, I've never actually physically met. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've got people that I consider very good friends, and I've known them years, but I've never actually met them. But we talk as well and stuff, so that's the important thing.
It's rather odd, actually. I mean, it's just, I don't know. So are you happy to be back home, as it were?
Yes, I am in some respects, because I found that wherever we live in the world, there's always good things and bad things to take out of any location.
True.
So while I kind of was always keen to work and travel around the world, and didn't really particularly want to come back to the UK, once I decided I am coming back, I've learned to enjoy the things that perhaps I didn't see when I was younger. So now I'm very much enjoying things like real ale in micropubs and the conversations that go on there. So there's always good things to take out of any location, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I was kind of felt bad for you when you were here in Hong Kong. You had such a nice place. A lovely garden that you were developing, and you just started to get settled, and then next thing I know, you were off again, back to the UK. So, but that's life.
It is. It's always been funny because Hong Kong for me was always, I lived in other countries, but Hong Kong it never sort of. There was about 3 or 4 occasions when I went there to work, but it never really flourished. And the last time I was there, as you say, I had a wonderful apartment on an unusual small island that really was like time traveling back into the 50s.
Yeah.
And I had, as you say, everything was just right. I was just starting my work and building my business there. But again, sort of fate asked me to let go of all of that and come back to the UK. But anyway, I was glad that I came back. It was brilliant to be back with my mum for the last few months of her life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is important. So what is different now? I mean, now that you're back in the UK?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Well, so when I was younger and I worked in the UK, and I still hadn't sort of, moved very high up in my career. So as you do, starting work and all that sort of stuff, what I found is that, let's call it the machine, the corporate culture, is so obviously greedy and soul destroying and fake, and it's just completely transparent. But when I look at some of the younger people who have been born into this, they don't see it at all. It's just the way it is, I mean, there's still, so it's the ever ongoing encroachment on civil liberties and quality of life. So that's one of the main sort of things. But actually, the first thing I noticed when I came back to the UK, I couldn't get over it, was chemtrails.
Oh.
That was something I never saw any. I mean, in Hong Kong, well, even when I was sort of living on a beautiful sort of tropical beach in Thailand, I saw one, I thought, one day, and I took a photograph of it. But apart from that, but when I came back to the UK, it was just so obvious. This is really happening. This is it's different when you're actually being sort of bombed by sort of 20 planes up in the atmosphere. So that took me by surprise, because I don't know what they are. I don't know what their purpose is, but it's impossible to ignore if you've been studying the subject or just keeping an eye on it for a couple of years. So that was one of the first things. Yeah.
And has the food had changed? I've heard that it has in Britain.
Yeah. Food used to be spectacularly poor in Britain when I was growing up in the late 70s and early 80s. But quality of food is terrific, if you know which restaurants to go to. But equally, the sort of the modern diet is, or contemporary diet is much more interesting. That said, Robert, a lot of people think that just because you buy a brilliantly packaged ready meal from Marks and Spencer's, that they're eating top quality food. And actually, I had an opportunity to cook something simple like a spaghetti carbonara for about 15 people the other day, and they were just blown away, that it tasted so good, and it wasn't particularly good in my view, but it had fresh ingredients and all that sort of stuff. And I'm shocked how people just eat really bad quality food. They think it's good, but it doesn't taste good, and of course it's loaded with so many preservatives and colorings and those sort of things.
And don't forget glyphosate. Yeah.
I mean, that's a worry, isn't it? Because you can. I mean, I don't spend all of my life thinking about what I want to, what I'm putting inside my mouth, but I do like to eat things that I hope are reasonably untainted. But with glyphosate, that cuts through everything from Cheerios to tampons, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's everywhere. So, what else has been on your radar recently?
Well, my radar has been consumed a lot with this QAnon phenomenon for the last year, which I think it's incontrovertible that it's some kind of psychological operation and some kind of information back channel. There's been too many coincidences, let's call it that, published as drops. But it hasn't ultimately delivered. And so I'm sort of getting to the point of, well, maybe it was a back channel that was going to be used for something, but now its popularity means that it just needs to be managed and ticking over. And I'm not from the left or the right. I used to consider myself a socialist, but and I still feel warm towards what I would call sort of benign British socialism, or some forms of European socialism, like the Scandinavian countries. But I don't belong to that left-right sort of paradigm anymore. I think it's just nonsense. But I did have some hope that that Trump would be able to kick ass in some quarters, but he just seems to be sort of semi-neutered. And just watching him, praise the hell out of Bush Senior. Well, that's just one that he could have said. You know what, this guy was a straight up Luciferian.
True.
There's some bad stuff going on in the background there. And but instead they have to go through with the show, and frankly, in a way, that's how you survive in modern life, by sort of going along with the synthetic reality that has been created by those before us.
Yes, I believe you call it a charade.
Yeah, it is a charade, and I suppose we all have to do it to some extent. Put on our shirt and tie, go to work, all that sort of thing. Would we want to be there if we could sort of be, at home or on holiday? Probably not. But so we all have to sort of, make some sacrifices. But most of it these days is just, it's margarine, isn't it? It's one molecule. It's one molecule away from plastic.
Right. It turns out that reality as we know it is a simulacrum of reality. So.
Yeah. That subject has sort of been explored by Baudrillard, hasn't it? Sort of some time back, but it's now that we, in fact, it's interesting because I was going back through the virtual universe stuff by Michael. What was his name? The young author. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I was sort of going back through his stuff, and it always struck me that although he died of AIDS, that he might have been an early victim of shut that guy up, like we need to shut up Bill Hicks because he's too close to the truth. So, but I always ask the question, okay, look, fine. There seems to be some scientific evidence for this virtual reality that we're either imprisoned in or experiencing. It's probably a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what does that mean? And what does it mean about the real reality? And why are we here? And those are the questions that I want answered, because it's just not enough to say most of the universe is nothing. The atom is largely a nucleus, and this tiny little electrons spinning around it. But in between is this vast gap of nothingness. That doesn't make sense. There's no value from it to go, well, okay, so it's holographic. That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
That doesn't help me get up in the morning. Oh, it's all right. Don't worry. You're having a rubbish day because it's holographic. Thanks, pal.
True. No, I know you and I have discussed this at length, that certain issues are very sensitive in society, and yet you've been extremely blatant about your views and other facts that you've dug up regarding Satanists and pedophilia and other things. Are you still pursuing that?
I factor that into my analysis of anything. Well, what role are what role could this possibly be playing in any scenario, and in politics particularly, and Hollywood celebrity. There's a large amount of compromised people who are paid. Joseph Atwell came up with the term. I think they're lifetime actors. So every time we see. I don't know. Who am I thinking of? The Barbara, the Hollywood singers.
Streisand?
Every time we get the Barbara Streisands, the De Niros, these people are actors, They've got a comfortable lifestyle by coming out and being outraged by something, which is actually pure sort of globalist agenda.
Right.
Yeah. So, I did a lot of work when it was an underground topic, and it's interesting because I was more familiar with the American style of blackmail operations, studying sort of characters like Cathy O'Brien and so forth. And then the Jimmy Savile thing kicked off in 2012.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? I know how this works. You know, I'm not shocked that some weirdo DJ was hanging out with the royals all the time. I know why he was hanging out with the royals, and I know pretty much what his role would have been. So, you know, provider of children. And also, I mean, it's sort of interesting when you look at Jimmy Savile sort of popping off to Israel in the 70s and actually having being part of a cabinet meeting with the prime minister then. Well, I mean, you know, for me, that's very much, well, if I was in MI6 and if I had a blackmail pedo under my thumb, I'd be saying, yeah, send this joker over there and see if he can find out who we can leverage and who we can get dirt on, you know?
Or create dirt on. Basically, right? Compromise.
Yeah, I mean, these people, these creeps, they know how to connect with other creeps. So, you know, it's like anything. It's a network, isn't it? So, yeah, I did a lot of work on, I mean, the things that sort of politically outraged me was Palestine, which, you know, there's some beautiful people in that country. And they've been tarnished as terrorists when, you know, they're the locals. They're not the people they're not the migrants that moved into their neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah. So that was one of my big subjects. And of course, institutionalized child sexual abuse. I don't research it so much now. I sort of you get to a point where you kind of PTSD'd or just worn out by the subject. So I still find it sort of deeply upsetting, but it is useful when analysing any situation to think, well, is this person blackmailed? Do they, you know, what is their background? What sort of person are they? What schools did they go to? Who did they hang out with? So that can be useful in analysis.
Right, and I'm certain that at the chambers there at Parliament, there's all kinds of people who have been compromised and might explain why they can't seem to agree on much of anything or make progress. Yeah,
I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there, isn't it? Which is that the pretense that, you know, there's some sort of semblance of rationality going on is right now, particularly with, you know, Brexit and Europe in flames with the Yellow Vest movement, particularly in Paris.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody's got a clue what's going on. Everyone's just trying to grab a slice or trying to maintain the status quo without it really, you know, kicking off.
Right. Well, I mean, it's come out that Macron is a Rothschild lackey, probably an MK Ultra abuse victim at a young age. In order to move up through the ranks there, he's quite the puppet, apparently.
Yeah. Well, okay, I do hear people saying that he's a Rothschild, but these days, that for me, that could just be that they're part of some banking dynasty, so that's fine or whatever. But you really do touch upon something which struck me when Macron went to the States. Well, the photographs of Trump and Melania dragging this bewildered boy around doing Luciferian hand signals from the balcony of the White House or whatever. Well, that struck me as this guy's a multiple and that they've got the trigger codes, or, you know, that they can lead him around looking like a numpty. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense that this is a kid who who's dissociated at a young age and has some level of programming in them. We don't know what techniques they use. There are rumors, but it still goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it starts with a choice, Charles, as far as I know. Now, I understand that these individuals usually are groomed from an early age, and they don't always understand the implications of what they're getting into. But once you start down that road, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get out.
Okay, so there are two routes to the sort of, you know, to the power, I suppose, which, as you say, one is a choice. You know, look, become a celebrity, but you'll have to endorse, you know, the things that we want you to. And then they're saying, well, if you don't take part in this ritual, that's something that's going to affect your entire future. So there is a choice element, but it's a fact that the bloodline families, you know, let's use that cheesy but reasonably accurate phrase, the Illuminati, or the network, that's what they call themselves, I think, in day-to-day business. They use trauma-based mind control techniques, or have done in the past. I don't know if that's still the case, but if you're, I mean, this is one of the things about, I get a little annoyed when people sort of say, well, George W. Bush did 9/11. Well, you know, the best explanation I've seen of George W. Bush is Frith Springmeyer's, no, he's a multiple. And we know that the Luciferians are quite capable of doing it to their own children.
Right.
So, you know, is Macron in that side of things? But as you say, he's probably a willing victim of the process. Yeah. But, you know, his agenda is so transparently obvious. You know, you just tick it off, everything from migration to one world currency to religion to transgender agenda. It's very much like the other pretty boy joker in Canada, Trudeau.
Oh, Trudeau.
Who a lot of people don't sort of perhaps know this, but Trudeau's father was big in that thing. I don't know if you've ever come across the name George Green. Was one of the early Project Camelot interviews, and he said he was at meetings with Trudeau, and you know, all that sort of Luciferian child abuse and MK Ultra sort of things going on there. And there's a picture of Trudeau carrying his son like a rag doll.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And actually, you know, I mean, the thing is, it's not just one isolated group. It's a network, I think, not only on this world, but beyond. And that's what we've been dealing with for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you that it does look like the manipulation that we're subjected to has a metaphysical element that is well, that's one of the elements, okay, that is at play. But as you say, it's simply a case of from another world. What does that mean? What are the rules that we should be aware of in order to navigate the dark side of a metaphysical world? I mean, I believe they do exist. I think numerology and perhaps gematria is sort of is one example of those rules that perhaps we can be sensitive to and keep an eye out for, because they do seem to be obsessed by numbers and pattern and that sort of thing. So it's a spiritual war, Robert. We've talked about this, you know, when we had those good times together. It is a spiritual war, and in a way that makes the daily struggle a little bit more worthwhile, you know. So yeah, I think wealth creation is a really good and positive thing. You know, if you want to run around in a Lamborghini, that's great. But I don't think that's what we're here for. No. And part of the truth movement is that we learn much about ourselves as well as about the sort of craziness and insanity that we seem to be submerged in.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, and we spoke about many very interesting topics, you know, not only in person but over the years. But one of the things I thought was fascinating is you told me that your mother's side of the family comes from Malta, and for people who don't know, there's something really unusual going on underneath or inside the island there. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because as a child, my dad was in the army, so we were stationed in West Germany at the time. It hadn't merged with East Germany, and we would drive from Germany through Austria, Italy, Sicily, and get the ferry from Sicily to Malta, and we would drive around the island. And I recall, as a very young person, being taken to these ancient temple sites and being told, you know, there are giant skulls there. So, you know, those are now no longer available. So, you know, they get sequestered, hidden away. You know, it's the mop-up operation. Okay, it's time we clean this story from the history books. And I think we've had many stories scrubbed from history. So there is that side to Malta as a possibly sort of historically important place in terms of proto-cultures, pre-Egyptian cultures. But also, Malta was pretty much the first landing stage for the Phoenicians.
Oh.
So, there's that whole sort of seafaring culture that didn't write anything down. I don't know how you do business without writing stuff down. I just don't know how that comes about. But, Malta is early Phoenician, obviously mixed up with a load of other genetic pools because of, its proximity to Italy and North Africa as well.
Yes, it is a crossroads in that regard, but not just through the sea lanes. I mean, that particular site that I'm thinking of, I think they call it the Hypogeum.
Yeah,
it's such an unusual construction, and apparently it's just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, that there's tunnels or whatever that lead deep into the interior of the earth there.
Yeah, there are caves, there are tunnels. I don't know how deep they go. I do also remember stories of children going missing, getting lost in the caves. It's a focal point, and in recent years, quite a few old researchers have started to take an interest in it. I mean, especially when we think that, as I understand it, there was a time maybe when the Mediterranean Sea didn't exist.
Or it was much lower. It was much lower than it is right now. The what they call the Straits of Gibraltar was actually a waterfall going out into the Atlantic when the sea level was lower. That's what I read.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting. Yeah, yes. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to sail over a waterfall. So there had to be other ways to access the ocean, I'm sure. But hold on just a moment, Charles. I need to take a break here, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Unicus Radio Hour, and we're podcasting today on the most incredible station on the planet, KGRA. Please stay with us through the break. Thank you.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefits. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Reclaim your active lifestyle with Angioprim. Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in your veins and arteries that can cause blockages. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com. Talk to a trained consultant by calling Angioprim toll-free 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If you have hard water, the Lime Scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate Lime Scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
There are many sounds in your day-to-day life. There are sounds that wake you up. Sounds that make you smile. Sounds that energize you. And sounds that help you relax. But there are some sounds that can alert you to danger and can help save lives. Wireless emergency alerts, now on many mobile devices, use a unique sound and vibration to bring you information about severe weather events, Amber Alerts, or other emergencies in your area. With critical information from local sources you know and trust, you can be in the know, wherever you are. For more information, visit ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to the Unicus Radio Hour. I'm your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, podcasting from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA, but you already knew that. So we're having a fantastic conversation with my friend Charles Frith, who's in the UK, and we were discussing his his family lineage, tracing it back to the island of Malta and some of the mysterious things that go on there. Was there anything else you can remember, Charles, that you heard about or experienced as a youth in that regard?
Only the subjects of the giant skulls being found, which were then subsequently removed, and nobody knows where they've gone, and the genetic pool crossroads of the place. Those are the only two things that I'm sort of familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't you tell me they were in a museum? Those skulls were in a museum for a time?
That's right. Yeah, they were on display.
No wonder they were removed from public view.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, isn't it? That there's a group of people whose job is to just keep the good information out of the hands of the human race, and you can sort of see it. It's probably not so important in the days of newspaper printing, and then radio comes along. But then when the internet comes along, it's like it suddenly becomes urgent, doesn't it? You've got to scrub everything that can be shared instantly, sort of overnight. I'm fairly certain that giants have existed on our planet. Why did they die out? I don't know. Probably we killed them, right? We sort of seem to be good at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We almost seem to be a genetically sort of tampered race in terms of our contacts with Neanderthals, giants. And, I do have a hypothesis, I suppose, the theory where it's been tarnished so much. But have you ever come across the Expando Planet model?
Yes, I have, but go ahead and elaborate for people who've never heard of it.
Okay, so the Expando Planet makes perfect logical sense that the Earth is a growing organism. In fact, maybe the universe is a growing organism. It just keeps getting bigger and changing and so forth. And so the continental plates are moving further away from each other because the planet goes through expansionary periods, which lead to, it's almost like a snake losing its outer skin as some sort of shedding process. And so the Earth changes its crust size. It gets bigger and it breaks up and it turns into something different. Well, the Expando Planet model is quite interesting because it explains why, say, for instance, large bone, massive creatures like, I know the dinosaur subject too is tainted, but why they would have died out, okay? Mm-hmm. Mainly because the gravity on a larger planet is more than on a smaller planet. So the energy required to pump the blood up the neck of a brontosaurus is simply not possible on a planet of our size. It would faint. Huh. So that makes sense to me. If we're talking about 9, 10, 15-foot giants, well, wouldn't they too suddenly start to degrade, to crumble, to lose their strength, their power? And so maybe it would have been the smaller humans that would have been genetically more predisposed to sort of grabbing all the food and killing off the competition. So that sort of kind of makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay. I hadn't heard it put quite that way before, but it's interesting. Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the record for giants is almost like, very simply, it's in the books. People wrote books.
Everywhere.
We traveled around North America with the Indians, and they told us about their giant stories, and so on. So, But this, as I said, this censorship erasing of history group, because they must work, and presumably the Smithsonian would be a good place for them to work. We need to keep this controlled.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's some sort of algorithm development, isn't it? That we need to keep an eye on. Who's creating waves on the internet, and can we control them? Is it easier to take them out, or is it better that we just crush their reputation, or redirect their information?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people, especially younger people, think the internet it's always been there. But it's actually, I think you and I are of a different generation. We remember
Yes.
back in the day of the dinosaurs when there wasn't an internet and people actually talked to each other face to face or through written letters, whatever. But yeah, it was originally designed by the military for crowd control, social engineering. And I believe it's working extremely well. Most people have no idea what it was originally designed for or how it's being used to control them. It's not there for our benefit, is what I'm trying to say.
It's funny because about 10 years ago, as the internet sort of moved into its 2.0 sort of phase, well, the specific function that I had in advertising, which is kind of a strategic role, meant that all of a sudden, all over the world, maybe 1,000 people who did the same job were sharing information, or at least sharing their views on what our job was and how we could do it and do it better. And I remember when somebody came out with a piece, I forget his last name, Jared something or other, and he wrote a piece on digital Maoism. And I roared with laughter. I said, come on, this is the internet. There's a billion points of view, and there's just no way that monolithic thinking is going to take off on the internet. But we now know. I mean, you must know sometimes when you talk to people about what's going on, and if it's not on their Facebook stream, they don't even know it exists.
Correct. Especially certain groups. It seems like my son's a millennial, so he's very has a different view. His paradigm is completely different. I mean, not just him, but I'm saying he and his peers, I know that happens all the time, generation gap, whatever. But I mean, their priorities are different entirely.
Yeah. Every generation has a right to define and frame their own reality. These are the things that appear important to me. These are the things that seem to be unimportant. But probably like our forefathers, it's only now that we realize, maybe having an appreciation of nature and not worshipping technology, maybe that is fundamental to the human condition. But I do worry about the younger ones because, as you say, they've been immersed in the internet from the get-go. So it just sort of seems to them to be something not only to take seriously, but also to take for granted.
Mm. I mean, at this point, it's so deeply ingrained in society and the culture that there's just no way. You see the people are, I don't like to use this word, but it's true. They are addicted. We are addicted. We're utterly dependent now on digital technology, for better or worse.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because you asked me earlier on, what are the things that I noticed? Well, when I came back to the UK, I found that I really enjoyed what's called sort of the micro-pub scene, which is quite often little startups, someone who used to have a shop that's now converted to a micro-pub, and they order in these mini kegs. There are also casks as well. That's a sort of a nuanced topic. But what I found in these micro-pubs, Robert, is that there's one particularly that I'm sort of thinking about. There's no music. They don't have a music license. So that forces people to engage in conversation. And so and I think it's one of the most popular pubs in my neighborhood. There's others that have music and stuff like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that with real ale, as it's called, which is proper brewed stuff, not the sort of lager craze of the 90s and 80s or whatever, but tasty beers that don't leave you with an awful hangover, and also have a qualitatively different intoxication. You feel a little drunk after a few pints, but not perhaps in a slightly different way, because it's real ingredients and stuff like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that I've experienced fantastic conversations, particularly with older people, but not necessarily. And, you know, you get talking to people who've got an allotment for the last 40 years, which is a kind of like public place where you can grow your own vegetables and stuff like that, and listen to their stories about how they solve different problems and make machines that remove stones from the soil. It's what I'm trying to say is that it's brilliant that I can submerge myself into that world of conversation, talk. And when I go outside, Robert, I don't even take my phone with me. There's just no point. Because one, I'm not going to be checking it, and two, I don't want to be disturbed. So I like to give people 100% FaceTime. But there's a flip side to that lifestyle, which is that when I'm not in that mood, then I'm very happy to be on the internet, trying to see if there's anyone describing their reality in a way that sort of resonates with me, or at least informs what I'm trying to understand. So when I think about that, you know, I've done my fair amount of traveling. I still feel that travel is, you know, one of the most wonderful educational experiences a person can go through. But there is a form of virtual travel on the internet by connecting with people all over the world. What I'm trying to say is that there is a good side to it as well. You know,
right. You don't have to have either or. You can have both.
Yeah, that's it. You know, you can spend, you know, I can spend 4 or 5 hours on the internet just seeing what's going on in various topics, and you know, and in politics globally, and then I can step outside and enter the real world of face-to-face conversation. But I guess that's where you and I are more lucky, that we sort of fall into that Gen Xer kind of thing, whereby we didn't have the internet,
right?
And you know, and suddenly our phones have greater processing power than NASA sending. I'm not talking about the lunar module. I'm talking about the whole of NASA.
Right.
They've got more processing power than the whole of NASA in 1969. But perhaps we can come on to that subject later on.
I've been needing to ask you that. Do you know if the microbrews do they have less preservatives or no preservatives?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's preservative free. It's
okay.
all little breweries, little madcap breweries experimenting with flavors and old recipes, and you know, but also very, very hip and creative names for the beers. But the thing about the cask beer is that it goes off after 3 or 4 days, so you've got to use it.
Right.
And that's the point. If it doesn't go off, it's probably not good for you. That's why they've got a 1,000-year-old Big Mac in the tape.
Okay, when you say go off for the Yanks that are listening here in the States, what Charles is saying is if it goes bad, and it will. I mean, actually, bottled beer, even though it has preservatives, it'll go bad as well. But you're drinking a preservative that is, I believe it's glycol. That's what somebody told me, something like that.
Yeah, and possibly that, but there's also a number of other things that they put in.
Okay.
I know in the lagers that they put phosphate.
Phosphate,
which,
right?
Yeah. So like you know, I did a job for somebody, and they gave us some beers, and I thought it'd be rude to turn them down, but
right.
I drank a few of them, and I literally had a headache straight away.
Yes.
That's how long I've not been.
It's really unhealthy. It's very unhealthy.
It's nasty.
But on the flip side, or a beer that doesn't have that kind of additive is actually healthy for you, doesn't give you a headache. But yes, it's harder to preserve it. Well, you can't. You have to, like you said, you have to use it in a few days. Otherwise, it's just, you got to throw it away.
Yeah, and you know, maybe that's a sort of that's a metaphor for how we should be looking at reality. That things that last forever are probably less about harmony with nature and more about preserving profit for as long as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a form of pollution, actually. I do think, again, this is social engineering. Phosphates, or they call it saltpeter, and that's something that
That's right.
we know for a fact that various militaries would put this in the food of the servicemen, essentially to piss them off. It makes you very angry or prone to violence. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's good if you want some serious fighting men in your platoon or what have you.
Yeah.
But I don't think you want that in the pub.
Yeah, that's probably, maybe. Well, you would if you worked for the intelligence services, who are all about creating division in society.
Well, that's true.
And so things like pub violence and football hooliganism, while they'll decry it in the newspapers, are actually successful social engineering projects for them.
Right. Yes. Unfortunately, divide and conquer or confuse us and control us, however you want to look at it. But yes, absolutely. I haven't been on your blog in a long time, so I just dialed it up today, and you've got a lot of information there for people to check out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's often worthwhile, and I do this on other people's blogs, to use the search function. So in the top left-hand corner is a search box, and so if you want to look up something like MK Ultra or child abuse or whatever the subject is, Israel or Zionism, then, I have got an awful lot of good stuff. But obviously over the years, a lot of the presentations that were uploaded to YouTube have been censored and scrubbed. So unfortunately, I do often find that the good stuff has gone. I lost my YouTube channel back in the day. Mm-hmm. I uploaded about, I think it was about 1,000 hours worth of, rare, hard to get videos that well, they originally were on places like Google Video. Do you remember Google Video?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff has been scrubbed, but there's still, I think a lot of good information there. So I'm often asked questions, and it's like, well, take Bush. I was just, H.W. Bush, just Bush Senior's death recently. Well, there's at least, 20 articles explaining in depth why the guy is rancid.
Yes. I thought it was curious that his son, his idiot son, said that he was the brightest point of light in 1,000 points of light, which to me, I think he was referring to the fallen angels, the Anunnaki, who are the dark lords, and yet they have a radiance about them. They do have a brilliance, but it's only distorted, perverted, whatever.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we were going to try and get in my bloodline expert friend, who, like yourself, I have conversations with, and anyway, so going back to the 1,000 points of light, it's very true. George Bush had a speech where he talked about 1,000 points of light, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so what I was explaining to my friend that I was hoping to bring along onto the show was that I'm thinking of writing an article called "In Defense of the Illuminati."
Whoa!
Which I know. Of course, it's obscene. It's like defending the indefensible. But actually, it's your words that triggered me, which is that in a way, there's an extraordinary, astonishing, overpowering sophistication and cleverness, and sometimes very hard to argue moral arguments against what they're saying. Although the bottom line is, well, do you approve of raping children and sacrifice? Well, yeah, they do. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm thinking about writing something like that, because look, it's one thing to say these are our enemies and we don't stand for that lifestyle, but I think it's more valuable to say, well, what does it mean if you're brought up into a bloodline family, like someone like Macron or possibly Trudeau or something? What would it mean? What are your value sets? How do you justify your actions? Because look, we all know that if we were in charge, would we be able to do a better job? And that's a question that I ask myself every day. In fact, I think it's the wrong question. the question isn't how can I get as much power as possible. The question is, like Kubrick suggested, how can I stay as far away from power as possible?
Yes, well said. Well said. Somebody asked me about my politics the other day. I said I avoid it like the plague, but I'm aware of it as though I was walking through a snake-infested jungle, because that's the way I see these. They're vipers, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they are all snakes. And it's just a great shame because I agree that politics is, it's so toxic and rancid. But unfortunately, to be able to communicate to people who don't go off the piste or off-piste skiing, you have to talk to them about what constitutes their reality. And if it's the left-right paradigm, you kind of got to point out to them, well, that doesn't really work, does it? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's it's just a challenge, isn't it? Having to dumb down what we really think so that people don't freak out.
Right, or ostracize or punish us. I mean, depending on how far you go. I think we've both been pretty fortunate in that regard. We've been able to get this far without getting into too much trouble.
You are right there. You are. I do feel it has definitely been close from time to time. And, you can be surrounded by people who definitely are looking to trip you up somehow. But compared to some of the great heroes of the information age who've paid for their work with their beliefs with their lives, we've been very lucky. And to be honest, I'd like to get to the end of it without sort of like keeling over without some kind of heart attack gun. But if that's how it's meant to be, well, that's how it's meant to be. At least I can't change what I'm doing. I have to continue to be what I'm being. That's the only way that I can stay healthy, Robert, by actually sort of trying to figure out am I correct or am I wrong? And if I'm wrong, can I change it and can I move on?
I've had to admit recently that I made a big mistake. I know I was being tricked, and I think this was shortly after you left. Didn't you leave just before summertime this year?
No, last year it was.
Was it last
year? Yeah, April last year. So
I'm sorry. I don't know where the time's gone.
I know, but it does tend to move extremely fast these days. I'm pretty much planning on being 70 tomorrow.
Okay. Well, in any case, over the summer there were some things that had happened that were really extraordinary, and this thing about I think with the X-Files, I want to believe. It's a very dangerous mindset, and I found myself in that position, and it was a vulnerability. I would put it that way, that they were manipulating, exploiting, they being the dark side, presenting themselves once again under false pretenses. And God, even my website had suddenly, I'm like putting an Anunnaki lineage there and trying to identify with it and promote it. And I don't know exactly what triggered me to the realization, like, hold on a second. Where do you think you're going with all this? And once I recognized that, I was a bit pissed, actually, but and I don't mean in a good way, like at the pub, after a pint or two or three, I was really very upset. And then I realized, okay, slow down, Robert. Don't take it personally. They do this to everybody or anyone that they can possibly find some leverage over. You're not the only one. So anyway, because I'm a public figure and I speak to a lot of people through shows like this, but also like coast to coast. I mean, I went out there and made a complete idiot of myself on behalf of these entities. And so, I had to walk it back and basically explain where I had been led astray. And it was, and actually a lot of people were they're not only okay with it, they liked the fact that I admitted I had made a mistake.
Oh, it's the most powerful thing you can do. I made a mistake. I was wrong, and I totally believe in this, which is that at the end of the process, which is humiliating and and damaging in some respects, but in its main form, it's reassuring, because honesty is something that costs something. Mm-hmm. And so if we're honest with ourselves and with the people around us, then at least they can see, well, maybe they're not always right, but they're trying to be right, which is a bit different from trying to line your pocket, trying to, whatever.
Right. Yeah, I know. And this is the thing. It's an awesome responsibility. It's sort of a blessing and a curse. I mean, I appreciate the fact that I can do this kind of work, speaking publicly and reporting whatever through the website and stuff. But there's a huge responsibility to try and be accurate and authentic. Do my best. Okay, nobody's perfect, and so but it's evolving. Let's put it that way. I do feel like the way they tried to trip me up or trick me. Mm-hmm. Once I realized it, I thought, hold on, I'm actually stronger. I've caught this before it went too far, in my opinion. Yeah. And I actually learned something from it. And now I feel like I'm in a much stronger position, and they're in a weaker position now, because they're certainly not going to try and pull that stunt again.
Yeah. Do you feel that you were a victim of misdirection or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I fully explained it to you, but we are coming up on another break here, so we'll have to continue this little explanation. I thought it was fascinating. I even took some pictures inadvertently of what appeared to be a fleet of UFOs over the water here in Hong Kong, and it all coincided with
I saw those.
Oh, you did see those. Yeah, and I'm not even sure I still don't know what they were, but it coincided with all this other stuff that was trying to make me believe that benevolent beings were here to help, and that I needed to work with them. And again, they were just trying to put strings on me and use me as a puppet or a PR person, which I'm not here. Sure. I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we do need to take another break, so just hold on, Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Unicus Radio Hour. We are podcasting from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you.
Wouldn't you love to have a really sharp memory? More than ever before, people of all ages are struggling with memory problems and brain fog. Whether your poor memory is age-related or due to the effects of chronic stress, you can now improve your memory while reducing stress with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. That's right, you get 2 products rolled into one. Some ingredients in Calm and Clever enhance memory and help retain newly learned information more effectively, while other ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce stress by maintaining healthy levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. To sharpen your mind and feel calm and centered, try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll love the way you feel and think. To order Calm and Clever, call 1-800-728-9948 or visit calmandclever.com. 1-800-728-9948 or calmandclever.com.
I'm a planner. Some of my friends say I'm a survivalist. I guess they're right, because when disaster hits, I have a survival plan, and it starts with my survivalist camp, my fully functional, off-the-grid bug-out house. And when the you-know-what hits the fan, I'm out of here. So what the heck is a survivalist camp? At first glance, it looks like a very nice RV, but it's really engineered to provide my family with 5 basic needs for survival: air, water, shelter, heat, and food. Survivalist Camps builds a camp to withstand all that nature and man can throw at it. It's fully mobile. My family and I can flee disaster fully self-sufficient in just moments. And its construction will last a lifetime. Look, if you're a planner, you need to check out survivalistcamps.com. They're like you and me. They believe a good plan is the best way to meet a disaster. Survivalistcamps.com. Be ready to be impressed. That's survivalistcamps.com. Get prepared at survivalistcamps.com. I'm a grandpa young enough to hike Big Sur with my son, and that's where I had a heart attack with no way to call for help. I felt sorry for my son. He looked as desperate as I felt as he took off for help. Luckily, he ran into Anna, a fellow hiker. She had a satellite phone, called for help, and saved my life. Today, I'm healthy and never out of touch because the satellite phone store makes it affordable to be connected anytime, anywhere. The satellite phone store gave me an Inmarsat iSat-2 satellite phone free. And the monthly plan is less than I spend on coffee every month. You can have one too while supplies last. Call the Satellite Phone Store, 877-705-8839. Remember, the Satellite Phone Store, 877-705-8839. TheSatellitePhoneStore.com.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRARadio.com.
Welcome back to the Unicus Radio Hour. I'm your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, podcasting from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. Thank you for sticking with us through the break. We were just discussing some things about the Anunnaki and some of the tricks that they pull on people, and that includes me. Charles, because you are in the UK, obviously you're a subject of the crown. Turns out that the right of kings is dispensed from these Anunnaki, that particular lineage. So, and I know you're familiar with the dark side of that whole family and the dynasty, but do you think that they will prevail, or is there a time coming when they will simply vanish from the affairs of men?
I'm hoping, because I think it's hope. I think it's hope that drives reality more than. I think if we imagine things, then we can create them. I think that there will be a time when, maybe here's a play scenario. Imagine if we sort of figured out, oh God, we've been manipulated by these beings, these intersection of off-world or metaphysical manipulation, stroke human genetic whatevers. And like we discussed earlier, we know that somebody must be in power. I can't imagine us going back to a time where we're foraging for berries and nuts in the woods, because it's difficult to wind the clock back so far. So we have to accept, look, if we're in a spiritual war, what's our goal? Well, our goal is to have a more spiritual and meaningful life. What does that mean? Well, it probably means, having some sort of struggle, having some sort of purpose, still having lessons, learning things, but do they have to be as obnoxious as child sacrifice and dissociative trauma and satanic ritual? No, it doesn't have to be that bad. But if you were going to have a group that you would say, you know what, we're going to put you in power, but as long as you know that we have a healthy disdain for your addictions. And by that, I don't mean the nasty things they do, but do you know that just because of your quest for power, you will always be toxic? But we recognize that there's a role for toxic groups in our future, as long as we're aware of it. I know that's a weird one, but that's kind of my sort of like trying to balance reality with hope,
Yeah, it's a very realistic view of things. I guess that's why I asked you, because you said that the title of that book you were talking about, that really piqued my curiosity. But I mean, the practical side of things is I don't see the royals, not just in the UK, but around the world. Their roles have been diminished greatly, and I'm sure that's purposeful. But there's generations of people that just, I think they couldn't even fathom of not being a subject of an empire such as it is.
Yeah, this is a great challenge, isn't it? Which is that how can we explore the true meaning of the human condition while people are on their knees saying, "Oh, you can't beat a bit of royal wedding," which is actually about chauvinism. It's about we're better than you because we've got these bloodlines going back thousands of years, and look at their brilliant gold carriages. That's why we're better than Haiti, or and it's this is the thing that bugs me a lot about the people who claim to be traditional and stuff like this. It's a form of racism,
Of course. Course.
But to try and answer your question, will the royal family be around? I get the impression that the royal family are almost trapped like we are. Yeah, I mean, there's that weird episode when I always try and tie up weird bits of information that are facts. So when the Princess Diana's butler, Paul Burrell, I think, was charged with stealing her things, which is the first strategy, isn't it? Smear your reputation,
right? And
she loved him. And he loved her. He worshipped her, and and so forth. Well, eventually the Queen let him off, but she wrote him a letter, or she said to him directly, there are powers and forces which are difficult to describe, but basically there's a dark entity in reality that even she is not able to control.
Correct.
And I thought to myself at the time, yeah, that sounds like bollocks. Probably you're in bed with the, with the bad guys. But now that I think about it more, now that I sort of see the royal family as potentially as sort of a genetic experiment in leadership that can be controlled through some kind of metaphysical action, or who knows, or off-world, or whatever, right? But then I sort of, I read history books, and I was reading I think it was a Lord Mountbatten biography, which is that's quite revealing in itself, that one. But he's local to Southampton, Broadlands, Romsey. Oh. So I took an interest in where I can dig up the archives locally in the library. But anyway, I came across this line that during World War II, the royal family took refuge from the Luftwaffe bombs in basically a cupboard underneath some stairs. Mm-hmm. And so it struck me, right, that that could be a piece of propaganda, couldn't it? Yeah, look at us, we're with you. But it's true. The royal family were loved during the Second World War because they came out to the bomb sites, and Prince Elizabeth worked in the Wrens or whatever it was, but they tried to get involved, on a practical level. But it struck me that Churchill, who was privy to the information when the bombs were coming over because they cracked Enigma,
right,
was scurrying out of London to get to Oxfordshire so he could be out of the way of the bombs. Or if he couldn't get out of London, then he had his own personal bomb shelter in a London Underground station that now no longer exists, precisely because they bricked it up for him to be safe. So what does that tell me? That tells me that maybe, as I say, it could be a piece of propaganda about them hiding under a cupboard under the stairs, because it does sound a bit fishy, doesn't it?
Right.
But it does say that maybe they're not as all powerful as we think they are, and by that I mean, they're the royals in this country, but if they ran away to Switzerland, they'd be just sort of B-list bloodlines, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is maybe they're trapped too. Maybe they're trapped in some kind of reality which they don't really know what the solution is.
Well, even if they wanted to get out, they couldn't.
Right, and of course you've got all the baubles and the trinkets to make life seem sufferable, which I think sounds insufferable. But
I mean, there was the one gentleman that abdicated his throne, but I don't see Charles doing that.
No, in fact, there's been an interesting change of sentiment. I mean, I don't tend to look for the news in the news industry. I look for changes of sentiment. So, whereby the media were slightly in favour of Brexit, I suppose. Now they've gone, okay, we'll accept this crappy deal that Theresa May has just agreed, which is basically like, oh, so you want to leave the European Union? We'll teach you a fucking lesson. Excuse my language.
Yeah, that's true.
I hope you can edit that one.
No,
out.
That's all right.
And a recent change of sentiment. This is what you have to look for in the media. 1 minute Prince Charles is a wacky cookie, talks to his plants, kaftan wearing prince or whatever, and now he's turning into the voice of reason. And I was only because I'm now working in an environment where people watch a lot of television that I'm subjected to what they consume, and I realised, this is a brilliant puff piece that the mainstream media are doing on Prince Charles. So they're moving away from the he's wacky and not trusted sort of narrative to, this will be a good replacement for England. And in some ways, I sort of don't mind a lot of his interests, but I do feel that we should always remember that the royal family had a big hand in murdering Princess Diana, and that's how they roll.
Yes, and my understanding is Prince Charles has been very active in behind the scenes with Parliament, writing letters to the prime ministers of the whatever era. So and of course that's upset a few people as that came out. But I do think that he is he's not that healthy. He's not. How much longer could he live if he was crowned?
Yeah, but I mean, these royals, I'm pretty sure they're getting their pre-teen blood transfusions, whatever it is.
Okay, but I mean at best, Charles, how many years are we talking? Maybe 10, 15? 20?
Well, okay, so the Queen's gone on till 80 now, or 80ish, isn't she?
Yeah.
And Charles, well, then theoretically he could squeeze 20 years out quite easily, 25 years out.
That's enough time to do some whatever. I mean, they're supposed to be just figureheads, but I mean, come on, the firm, as it's known, through central London to the actual city of London that runs the finances of the world, I do think they have a lot more influence than most people realize.
Yeah, I struggle with this question a lot, Robert. As I say, I don't think I'm brilliant at giving the answers, but I do think I'm, chipping away at what's the better question. So the royal family clearly must have very strong ties to the corporation city of London, and their wealth must be invested in that. And I suspect that they're also shareholders of the Bank of England, right? Yeah. But my question is, right, if you were a field general, or let's take the American perspective if you want, 4 or 5 star general in America, and you realise that the people who print the money are the problem, well, you would just say, right, we can do a coup here. We can just take out the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so why wouldn't there be a military or a kinetic action to take out something which is a bureaucratic institution? I don't understand it, Robert.
I think understand. You just answered your own question, though, because it's systemic. It's the infrastructure itself is so reliant on it. If you destabilize it, it's going to cause utter havoc. In other words, you'll kill the patient trying to remove the tumor.
Yeah, okay. I guess you're right on that side. You're right. It's systemic, and I suppose in a way that's why the sort of QAnon stuff I found it quite intelligent and appealing, because they're saying, look, we are in charge, but we don't have control of the media. So if we don't have control of the minds of the people, then actually we can only affect change on a level that they don't really notice. Right. Yeah.
I've been my son briefly went for a couple of weeks. He was in London visiting and actually staying with friends in Hyde Park, which I thought was rather bizarre. But anyway, he was there. And, it was at a time when you guys are having record numbers of stabbings in the street. And I thought, God, I didn't want to make him paranoid, but as a parent, I was very concerned. And he says, "Well, it's not happening over in Hyde Park." I'm like, "Well, then stay in Hyde Park. Don't be wandering about." Do you know anything about what is going on?
Well, okay, so I was always, I still am, Robert. I'm multiculti, right? I'm an international vagrant. A multinational gypsy or whatever. I love traveling around in my flip-flops on a plane, just being an ordinary bloke trying to experience, extraordinary things. But so I'm multiculti. I've always enjoyed the last time I lived in London, I lived in Croydon, which is, it's basically Turks and Slavs and some.
Charles, you back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you're back now. So you were saying that there's a diversity of people living in London. I kind of knew that, but go on.
Yeah. Okay. So I really enjoy living in a multicultural environment. But when I was living in Thailand and speaking to my mother, who's a foreigner herself, she's Maltese, but had done 50 odd years in the UK. When my mother, who worked for the NHS, who worked for the court systems, explained to me that that there were too many migrants coming into the country. Well, who was I, as some beach bum out in Thailand, say, no, Mum, you're wrong. Your multicultural, multilingual son is wrong, okay? And that's when I realized, no, look, we must allow freedom of movement, but we also have to recognize that our tormentors, our persecutors will always weaponize any subject.
Right.
So they are quite capable of selling the bombs that they profit from to go and bomb a country and then encourage the migration, whereby they get that miscegenation effect that they want, which is a sexless, genderless, ethnicless, insect drone worker who plays on PlayStation and watches Hollywood movies. That's what they want. They want someone they can completely control.
Yeah, biological automatons essentially is what I believe the Anunnaki prefer. And yet, somehow we have these anomalies, like yourself, myself, and others, people that listen to this show, I believe are awake and aware, and they don't comply as much.
Yeah, but we also stand out quite a lot, so quickly picked off.
Well, fortunately, it's not open season on us right now, but not that I would really matter. It doesn't matter that much. I figure didn't sign up to come here for eternity. It's an experience.
Yeah. And what an experience it is. It's like being trapped in the loony bin. I honestly feel like that sometimes.
It is. But I try not to let it. Well, I'm not going to go mad over it. It's just, although at times it's maddening.
Yeah.
When you're trying to sort it all out, and it's one of the reasons that I do this show is because I'm working on that. I know a lot of people are, but I mean, I really spend most of my free time, if you can call it that, because I still consider myself to be free in a prison planet. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? So I'm working on trying to sort it all out, and I figured one of the ways I can help myself and others at the same time is to do a show like this, to have a website like unicusmagazine.com, which has evolved as I evolve. And, I mean, I just feel like, what else am I going to do with my time while I'm here?
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good time to point out to you, listeners. I've always liked this about you because we've spent so long in the alt research community, trying to get to the bottom of the issue or the top, as would probably be a better explanation. Because, and the thing about your work is that you are the only person who's crystallized the notion that maybe there's a single entity, an origin for this source of turmoil and pollution and toxic spiritual pollution that is actually manipulating events. And to me, that sounds much more rational than humans are a bit of a fuck up, because you know what, we're a product of nature, but it seems that we've been tampered with.
True. Unfortunately. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that, but I do think that's by design as well. What they say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing us he doesn't exist. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and because the implications are enormous. The other thing is I talk about it from a personal basis, but that sort of diffuses the situation. When I just say, well, I think this, and the other thing happened to me, and then other people kind of like use that as a template, and it's just a more comfortable way. Because the religious dogma isn't working. Obviously, if it was, we wouldn't be in this bind. I'm sure political problems too are not getting resolved by this the current paradigm.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it sort of goes back to that thing that maybe devolution is a more sensible and healthy way, whereby we can. At least we can bring decision making down to the most local type of action, and thereby, if we make a mistake, well, we make a mistake locally. We don't do it globally.
Well, unfortunately, though, everything is a global. We have resumed being a global village. I think we always have been. It's just we're becoming more aware of it now that everything is linked up digitally. I mean, I think I told you this. I was in Bali last month, and I was actually listening to this show, sitting on the beach in Bali, and that place is completely developed now. It's, I think, overly developed, and but I was actually able to listen to the show or text people all over the world, because at this point I've got friends everywhere. But it's just a strange feeling, and I do think that the thing that keeps me going really is I have this just unbelievable optimism that our true potential is yet to be realized once we get past some of these impediments.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Robert. That our potential is so much more rich and colourful and educational as well. We're here to learn, and I don't think the learning experience should come to an end if we resolve a lot of the problems that are stacked against us.
Right.
But yeah, the way it's done at the moment is too extreme. The gap between, I mean, even the gap between the hungry and the non-hungry, that's something that's so easy to sort out. It's not even a tenth of the defence budget, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so really what we're saying is we're holding on to old models of conflict when actually we have new models of problem solving that will still always be there. Because, I mean, look, you know, if you provide everything for a person, let's take that Swiss thing whereby everyone gets universal kind of credit.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't minimum wage is basically unemployed or whatever, but everything's covered. All your bills are paid. Would that encourage a person to become useless, or would it encourage them to become successful? Well, there are two types of people, aren't there? There are those that want to sort of get on with life and need a helping hand while they go through change or transformation. And then there are others that, oh, good, I don't have to do anything. I can just, you know, live off other people's hard work. But I do get the impression, listening to people like Catherine Austin Fitz and so forth, and listening to ideas like the Secret Space Program, that we're talking about there's slush funds of trillions, not millions or billions, and therefore all of our problems can be solved. But then we have new problems. What do we do with all our wealth?
Right. I am following her work. I've been aware of her for a while, but I've only recently gotten really buckled down and started listening to her, and also Joseph Farrell. And he's also a fantastic resource for this topic. And my library, I don't know if you've been to my library at unicusmagazine.com lately, but that has evolved, grown considerably. Not just the books, but there's videos and articles and stuff. And the Secret Space Program is not a secret to the people that are participating in it. They're just keeping it secret from us.
Yeah.
The workers, such as we are, and that is a very difficult pill to swallow, because I think we're in a lot of ways we're powerless to do something about it right now, but I don't think it's going to stand forever.
My hope, Robert, is look, I don't expect to see, you know, everything that I want manifest for humanity in my lifetime. You know, it wouldn't make it an interesting story otherwise, would it? It's just if it was all tailored just for me.
Yes.
But or us. But I do hope to see one day where the media is completely backed into a corner and have to reveal that something that was previously thought to be a bug-eyed conspiracy theory is actually true. Because just that one admittance, right, would transform, still not everybody, but a lot of people to say, you know what, maybe we have to go back to the beginning. And in that sense, people like you and I and your listeners would be at the front of the train and not the back of the train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit like a crack in a dam. I think the pressure would break. Certainly the revelations that were published last year, about a year ago, in the New York Times were not it. A lot of people in the alternative media were, especially those that are pro-disclosure, so-called, they thought that was the beginning of it, but apparently it wasn't. So I think all that was completely controlled by the CIA. So if I understand, if I read it correctly.
You mean the Tom DeLonge stuff, that kind of area? Yeah.
I mean, don't be too critical on him. It's not his fault, but I know he agreed to be the front man for a motley crew of so-called former CIA operatives, if there can ever be such a thing, that were now ready to tell us the truth through the New York Times, that have been green-lighted to supposedly, you know, bring this story to the masses. And it's all a charade, I think. In my opinion, none of that was authentic.
Yeah. Okay, but I mean, this all stems for me back to the Apollo missions. Which, look, do we know if we've been on the moon? Nobody can prove that stuff. But what we can say is what was presented to us, material, is studio. It's a studio mock-up. You know. Anyway, so I asked the question. Well, hold on a moment. If Russia was in a space race, then surely they would call it out. And actually, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the last it started off about a year or two ago with Russia Today saying, hold on, I'm quoting somebody saying, hold on a moment, did they really go to the moon? You know, but now it's been a few stories in the last couple of months in Sputnik and RT Today, and also a few others of Russian scientists saying, well, when we get to the moon, we're going to check for your tracks.
Right.
Now, what does that say? Of course they know that the Apollo photography is studio. They probably know what's going on behind the scenes, you know. But why is it that they collude with each other to keep the truth from us? That's a question I'd like to know the answer to. Okay,
brief answer is, because we're coming up on a break, is that the Russians were lying as well about their space program, and that they had so many failures that they never wanted to be made public. And because it would make them look impotent, and they couldn't afford that. At least the government couldn't, the military could not afford. At least that's what they thought. So there was capitulation, there was collusion, and But see, that's nothing new. That's politics as usual. Like I said, there are no secrets on the inner sanctorum of these various groups. It's just it's all smoke and mirrors to keep us under control.
Yeah, but I would have thought that with the collapse of communism, that there would have been some secrets come out. But it seems that, you know, people have gone over to the archives, and it's like WikiLeaks. Yeah, we've got emails from people using code words and stuff like that, but most of it is just humdrum dross that says, they don't even talk about 9/11 because everybody's so embarrassed. Everybody's so embarrassed by it. They just don't want to talk about it. But when they do, they have to refer to it as a real thing because in the eyes of the masses, it was real.
Yes, absolutely. Hold that thought, Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Unicus Radio Hour. You're on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet, KGRA. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy. Bugs. I hate bugs. Our home is clean, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. The ingredients in Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. So Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com and Ace Hardware.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up. Standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
We are the contact for alternative research topics. The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to the Unicus Radio Hour. I'm your Jedi host, Robert Stanley, podcasting from Hong Kong on the greatest alternative talk radio station on the planet. Thank you for sticking with us through the break. This is the final segment. It's going to go quick, so please pay attention. Charles, we were speaking about the so-called space program, or at least the one that's out in the public's eye. Clearly, something else is going on behind the scenes. And since you brought up other people like Aston Austin's Fitz and others, the cost of the secret space program is in the trillions. Tens of trillions, if not hundreds of trillions. In fact, I think your numbers are a little low. I mean, this is in the regular mainstream news. What I've been seeing and reporting this year is it's they say 250. It was actually 247 if you want to be exact when I saw it. $247 trillion dollars is not missing. They said we're in debt. Well, that's a lot of debt. To whom? So right. But the other thing is, it's just I've already known this because when I worked for Honda Research and Development on some of their projects that included mining in space, the numbers, and I don't mean this to be funny, it's not, no pun intended, the numbers of the value of mining just a single asteroid is astronomical. In fact, it was just reported this week that it could be, one asteroid could be worth over $1 quadrillion. Of course, that's going to upset the entire infrastructure because everything's based on supply and demand. The prices of everything, such as precious metals, they're not so precious anymore when you start importing tons and tons from outer space, right? It's gonna be a very difficult, logistically, it's going to be a nightmare. And I've reported on this extensively. I'll tell you what my concern is, Charles. I don't know if you're following this. What the Trump administration is trying to take credit for this so-called the new branch of military, U.S. Space Force. Yeah. And I typically call it a space farce because I don't know if Trump knows this, but it's already out there. It's already, it was established a long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, the guesswork is that Trump's, because he did make an interesting when you become president and you have the inauguration. He made an interesting inauguration speach where he referred to technologies that would unlock so much for us.
The secrets of the universe. Sounds like a movie script.
Well, it sounds like movies, but the thing about Trump is that he's so much better on the campaign trail than actually in government, isn't he? I mean, it's the reality. Yeah, it's the reality versus the rhetoric, isn't it? But anyway, he did say it, and it does sort of beg the question, which is that maybe his thing is basically sort of like, why don't we just admit there's a space program? We'll give it a name and say it's new, but actually it's been around forever. Yeah,
and there's a lot of pushback, especially from his opponents. But I was able to establish from different sources that this really does exist, and it is. I would expect in a military hierarchy that a space force or any military force in space would be preeminent over anything on the ground. Mm. The other thing was weird, Charles. About the same time, just recently, as I started reporting this, the Army has put out in the regular mainstream media, they said we are training to fight underground as well. Without identifying a specific enemy, they're talking about creating not only special forces to fight underground, but they would be working just like in outer space with androids. They're going to be having swarms of robots that they're going to be using to fight underground.
Well, I mean, this opens up the crypto-terrestrial subject, which we often talk about beings or aliens, but it does seem likely that some manifestation of non-human entity is possibly, below Earth, in subterranean living. Anybody would want to do that when the surface of the Earth is absolutely fantastic, when it's been left alone by man. I don't know, because we are very blessed to live on a beautiful planet, although much of it has been taken care of badly.
Yeah, polluted for sure.
Yeah, so I wonder, well, why would you want to live on? When I listen to, there's bases on the moon that go underground for 5 miles. I think, well, why would you want to live on the moon when you could come here and at least pop over to Bali sometime and message your friends all around the world?
Yeah, I did that actually. I had a picture of myself holding a beer on the beach, with a kind of semi selfies, basically just showing the beer. And the beach, but a cold beer at a warm beach, and don't you wish you were here, kind of thing. But we don't know what's underground. We really don't. It could be quite lovely. I kind of doubt it, but this brings us back to what we were talking about earlier. Is in Malta, the island of Malta is not very big, but if there's an entrance to something in the inner Earth, it could be massive. The tunnel systems, and let's look at central Turkey for just a moment. We didn't know that stuff even existed. It was an accident back in the 60s that they started to find a little bit. Then they found out that there was these incredibly huge cities for thousands and thousands of people, and that there was multiple cities connected by miles-long tunnels.
Yeah.
So who built them and why? We don't know. It's all speculation. In fact, a lot of that stuff is still buried. They're not excavating it.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's been so long since I've thought about it, but I do recall spending time with that subject, and it does sort of suggest that there was a time when man knew that some sort of great cataclysm was coming and said, well, look, in order to survive, we're going to have to be underground with storage. We're going to need to have food and all the necessities underground for a few years while, the weather and takes its toll on the surface. I get that feeling, because otherwise you wouldn't just start building and go, let's live underground. You would have to have a reason for it, right?
Right, and that goes back to what you'd said before. There's a war going on, and it's not just a spiritual war. There's a physical aspect to it as well, and there's done a lot of damage. This is, again, Joseph Farrell talks about it, others as well, that there was a planet beyond Mars. Mars actually may have been a moon of that larger water world that was destroyed in a war. So it's a fascinating subject. I mean, clearly the moon's been damaged as well as this world. So it seems like the entire solar system is like a battlefield. And I don't think it's limited just to this solar system. I mean, it's probably galactic or intergalactic. This whatever the original war, it's just like anything else. You devastate one area and you move on to the next.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it raises the notion that a lot of people think that something like the secret space program is a case of as a group of humans who have to go off and fight a secret battle. But I guess that they're at that level of living whereby they go, you know what, we don't have to mess around with these guys on the planet here. We can just boldly go where no man has gone before and wreak destruction now that we've sort of captured the planet.
Yeah, that's one of my deepest concerns, is that we're not that doesn't solve anything. We're just exporting our particular form of society, which is pretty insane, actually. When you think about it, it's not sustainable. It's not ethical. And yes, to think that we can somehow resolve our differences or our internal, issues. If anything, I think it's compounded when we move off world, because we have to. Well, there's a lot of restrictions, especially when you're just setting up a colony. It's some, and I understand the need for for military or some sort of law enforcement. You got to have rules, otherwise it's just going to be like the Wild Wild West or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Do we think a cow or a pig on a farm would say, no, we don't need any military if they could be protected? Of course not.
Well, yeah, corporations are going to absolutely insist that their investments are protected. And so but the thing is, it's human nature. We're going to we will be competing with each other once we move off world. That was my ultimate point there. The competition is not going to stop once we move off world officially. I think if anything, it'll probably increase.
It's interesting because this is pure speculation, but I think there was a quote by Hitler who had a vision of man in the future, and he used the word cruel, and he is terrible and fearsome and cruel. And I thought to myself, what sort of scenario would create a future whereby man was the cosmic force for destruction or whatever. And I sometimes get the impression that with all the attention that's focused on Earth, with our genetic manipulation, with our prison planet, that actually, right, the aliens' real problem is not so much that we're ripe for the picking, but actually it's a containment strategy because we are the real danger. And I don't mean that in a way. What I mean is that if you've got other beings or whatever looking at us, they might fear us more than we actually fear them. And so maybe the future is about a hardened, battle-scarred human race. Finally taking control of things and trying to figure out how to clean up the mess in the cosmos.
Well, I mean, the thing is, we could be refugees in some regard, and that would explain why we are so warlike at our core. Because we have survived. Our ancestors and ourselves are an extension of that war. I don't think it's over. And unfortunately, my opinion on this is that the bad guys are the ones that are in control. They're in charge of this region, and we emulate them whether we like it or not. Of course, there's a lot of false pretenses, but as I was saying before, the power structure itself, it is very top-down hierarchy, and I do think it descends from these so-called gods or the dark overlords. And I don't see how that they're going to relinquish control easily. What is the benefit for them to do something like that?
Well, that raises a powerful question for me. One of the great things coming back to the UK as well is that I've got to spend more time with my father, who probably has been taking a sneak peek at my blog from time to time, and now watches UFO videos on YouTube or alien explanation. Anyway, so he's not ignorant. That's what I'm trying to say. So he's been red-pilled on a number of things. There's also his red line. I will never accept this is happening because otherwise that would really be terrifying. And I'm like, no, it's really happening, Dad. But anyway. We often have these conversations, and he always reminds me, and I've tried to explain it to him in a number of different ways, but it's not. I'm not explaining it well. He always reminds me, what would be the point of an alien force manipulating humanity this much, when in actual fact they're capable of destroying entire planets?
Okay.
And my sort of feeling on that is, again, it's this containment strategy thing, that there's something in the human genetic profile which is indestructible. And it's something that they can smash and tear and traumatize and ritualize and do all sorts of things to, but somehow out of it, the human genetic profile manages to adapt, to overcome, and we might be significantly reduced, but you can never quite get rid of us. And so therefore it would make sense for some kind of off-planet kind of force to say, right, well, if we can't sort of destroy them outright in one go, then we'll do it by surreptitious means and try and control them through psychology, mind control, and genetic experiments. And the one that I wanted to raise in this conversation is artificial intelligence, which maybe that's a bad description for it, but let's call it, gargantuan processing power, gargantuan outcomes or potential outcomes, processing of, well, if we do this, what are the scenarios, scenario, role-playing, all that sort of thing.
Right.
Well, the thing about AI that I find quite frustrating is that people tend to talk about AI as if it only has been a problem or could be a problem now. And I'm like, do you really think that other intelligences have come to our planet and they've got a box of tricks, right? And some of it might be metaphysical dark arts, occult rituals, and others might be, well, okay, we can control these number of outcomes using artificial intelligence.
Right.
My sort of question is, what would it mean if the Essenes were being manipulated by artificial intelligence? If we could go back a couple of thousand years and say that right from the get-go, our development as a species was being manipulated early on, you know?
Yes, through things like religion and the sophistry that they employ. And I'm sure you're right about this, that the gods, or our perception of them, has been greatly influenced by entities that aren't real. In other words, they're avatars within a program. And that's what I was trying to allude to before. It was really quite shocking for me to realize that. But on another level, it was liberating as well. Having grown up in a family that was religious, I mean, still is to this day. I think I told you this. I'll just be straight up with the audience. My dad lives in the UK. He's lived there for quite a while, and beautiful region of the country. But the point is, he's an American by birth, even though his direct bloodline comes from Eastern Europe. The point I'm trying to make is that he was influenced at a young age by an individual named Yogananda. But what I didn't know was that Yogananda was a practitioner of dark arts. This is in the public record now. Okay, this is not my opinion. This is what I learned after I realized that I was being manipulated by these same forces. And it does have a very synthetic feel to it. In retrospect, what they tried to do to me this year, what it was trying to do to me using these icons, it is a form of sophistry, or it's a very, very advanced form, I should say, of sophistry. Religion is, I feel, on this world, the ultimate mind control. Using these characters, these avatars that they toss out there, and it works really well in that regard. To some extent,
I struggle with the religious question because worship is something that I've had moments of out in nature or staring up at the cosmos where you can't help but be in awe of what's around us. But I can't imagine a scenario where any creator being or God or whereby that entity would ask for its servants or subjects to get down on their knees and bow down to it. I mean, what sort of titanic ego would want that? He's obviously.
But that's my point, Charles. That's why I'm thinking that the program knows exactly what our weaknesses are, and they exploit it because they God, this is like trying to say aluminium. I know it's natural.
Yeah.
Okay. Anthropomorphize.
Yes.
Is that the right word?
Anthropomorphize. Yeah.
Thank you. We want to humanize everything, including the so-called forces of nature or God or gods. In other words, in order for us to relate to it, we want to bring it down to those terms. And I think that this program is designed to exploit that. I mean, for sure, that's what it was doing to me. Over the summer.
I agree. I totally agree. It's a weakness of ours that in this field of partial ignorance, it's only natural to look towards some sort of steady rock of reassurance that that although we have to make our own decisions, wouldn't it be nice if if there was a set number of rules which could determine a successful and happy life. But yes, we are exploited, we are manipulated, and religion is definitely is a set of programs. That's what it is, and very sophisticated ones. And if we look at the voices coming from burning bushes, or the angel Gabriel suddenly descending on a man in a cave on the Arabian Peninsula. Well, that looks like manipulation to the nth degree. That wouldn't last 5 minutes in today's connected world, because people would be like, yeah. Even
though, hey, look, since you brought it up, when Muhammad had that vision, so-called, of Gabriel's been around. But yeah, he seemed to be, or it seemed to be seeding certain beliefs, social engineering. And so when Muhammad first said, "Oh, I had this vision," and this guy who's allegedly illiterate starts writing this book, people were pissed off. They wanted to kill him. The people around him were not happy about it. And the fact that it would persist and evolve over time lends me to believe that the whole thing was preordained, not by divinity, but by what you were calling it before, an artificial intelligence that's designed to control us.
Yeah. It also seems that there's a twin track narrative going on in human history, whereby one element is manipulation, but one element seems to be human history punctuated by great spiritual beings who started movements that the controlling forces said, "Oh, you know what, this is a problem. We need to get a handle on this." And rather than crush it, because they knew they couldn't crush it, it was more important to subvert it.
To co-opt it, yes.
To co-opt it is a much better word. Thank you. Yeah, and that's what I think they do brilliantly well. And one of the interesting things about Christianity is that, and all of my friends are like you and myself. We're much more embedded in the spiritual quest than the doctrinal or religious quest, right? But it does seem that the controlling powers really hate the Christian story, that there's something in it that they couldn't crush, that there was no way to twist it from black to white. Many other things they could twist from black to white. Men wearing cassocks, because prior to that, women were the priests of the tribe, and the men were the courageous primates that defended the female priestly class or whatever. Yeah. So they can turn some subjects upside down, but other subjects, like maybe forgiveness, which can be a weakness if it's overdone, but intelligent forgiveness can be a very powerful thing as well. True. And that's a story that they don't like. And one of my friends, who's totally not into the subject, is the bloodline expert that I was talking about. He has asked me. He said, "Why is it that they hate the Christian story?" And we can see that by the emergence of the size of the menorah on the White House lawn. But this is, to be fair, this is something that Trump has picked up on, which is the significance of Christianity. And I don't know if you've seen that extraordinary picture of his pastors and stuff in the Oval Office laying hands on him.
Yes, I did.
It's an extraordinary picture, isn't it? It's like belief.
Oh yeah. I realize here's the thing. Just like when you go fishing, you have to use bait. And it always works better if you have real bait. Yeah. I do think that you're right. There's some real events that have happened that were benevolent or are benevolent that have been co-opted, but getting to the truth of that is very difficult. And honestly, they want us to argue about the validity or the accuracy of all of that, and as opposed to just embracing it. Like what's happened to political correctness. I was surprised when I came to Hong Kong that everybody, it's common practice to say Merry Christmas, whereas in America now, it used to be Happy Holidays. And now they didn't even want you to say that. It's like, winter solstice wishes or something. It really has always been a problem. You're right. There's certain aspects of the story, the narrative of redemption, and I think more importantly, the personal relationship. I think it took it out of the hands of the priesthood in a way that they really, really felt threatened by, and that's one of the reasons that they just don't like it.
Yeah, Yeah, and and it's for this reason that I like to keep an eye on the topic. Clearly the Vatican is is a center of malevolence. It's just so bad. I mean, I sometimes I'm just shocked. When Pope Francis came out, he did a number of things which I thought, oh, those are quite good moves. Free showers for homeless people in Rome. But these are all cosmetic, aren't they?
Yes.
All you have to do is sell off your arts and treasures to some trust fund that we get to look at now and again, and you'll raise enough money to keep the earth revolving for. But lately, nowadays, it's just so easy to spot, isn't it? Everyone from Macron to Trudeau to Pope Francis, and they all look like creepy globalists, and they all talk the same language, and they're all selling the same hocus pocus.
That's right. It is sophistry. The root of that is the word for the name of Sophia. The Gnostics blame her for creating the Archon. And
she did, didn't she?
Well, according to those texts, but again, I don't know the validity of these things. I think we could argue about that and never get anywhere because, again, if this is a program that's being run, I believe that controlling the information or putting out false information, false narratives, is essential to keeping us confused and therefore controlling us. It's divide and conquer, and it's working. It's working magnificently.
Robert, I don't think I'm not sure if there's a single story that hasn't been corrupted. Mm-hmm. Is there a single story that we can, even something as simple as, was there a global flood? Which, of course, the geological records say yes, but just because the Bible says it, then the geological records have to come up with some sort of caveat to say, well, it wasn't really like that, or it was only at certain, There's nowhere that we can put we can drop our anchor on and say, you know what, we know this is true, and from here we can build somewhere. We're literally grasping at a lot of straws a lot of the time. Right, and science is another religion. It's a newer religion, but it's based on faith or theory. Excuse me, same difference. Okay. So we have to take their word for it because they know better. They are the authorities. Charles, we are out of time. I got to tell you, it's a pleasure always speaking with you, my friend. And whatever you're doing, please keep me informed. Yeah, of course I will. Thank you very much, Robert. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope it's of value to your listeners. And I shall be sharing it with my network too. Yes, and at the risk of offending some people, I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you too, Robert. Thank you. Praise be. Bless the Lord. All right. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes another episode of the Unicus Radio Hour. I do appreciate you tuning in. As always, there is no show without you, the listeners. And again, I always have a great time. I think you know that. I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't, because this is a labor of love. And I do love you all. I know that sounds weird, and I'm not pandering. I'm just telling you honestly from my heart, from my soul. This is why I do this show, okay? It's to connect with you. Yes, it's remotely, I know that, but it's still a connection nonetheless. And I think this is what the future is going to be all about, is us sharing honestly from our heart, from our soul. So until next time, may the force be with you.